July 4, 1969, 9:45 p.m., a dark and stormy night in Vallejo, California. A man and woman driving along Lake Herman Road were about to become the first victims of the infamous Zodiac Killer. Their screams echoed through the night air as a stranger approached them with a gun. The driver, Darlene Ferrin, attempted to flee, but she was caught and shot multiple times. The passenger, Michael Mageau, was hit in the arm and managed to escape to safety. The scene was one of pure chaos and terror, the sound of gunfire echoing through the night air, the smell of smoke and blood, and the feeling of utter helplessness as a killer struck without warning. The darkness of the night was illuminated only by the faint light of the moon and the flash of the gun's muzzle. The victim's car was riddled with bullet holes, its interior a blood-soaked mess. The killer's footsteps receded into the distance, leaving behind two innocent lives brutally cut short. As the storm raged on, the sound of police sirens echoed through the night, a beacon of hope in the face of unspeakable horror. The killer's first victim, Darlene Ferrin, was a 22-year-old school teacher from Vallejo. She was described as a kind and gentle soul, loved by everyone who knew her. Her killer, on the other hand, was a monster, a calculating and ruthless individual who took pleasure in the suffering of others. The killer's choice of victim was seemingly random, but some have speculated that he may have had a personal connection to the couple. His true identity remains a mystery to this day, shrouded in secrecy and speculation. Witnesses reported hearing the sound of gunfire and seeing a figure fleeing the scene. They described the killer as a tall, thin man with a distinctive mustache and a white t-shirt. Some witnesses claimed to have seen him wearing a black jacket and a hat. Others reported seeing him fleeing on foot, while others said they saw a car speeding away from the scene. The eyewitness accounts paint a picture of a coordinated and deliberate attack. Before we go further, hit subscribe and the bell. We post new cases every single day. Arthur Lee Allen, a 39-year-old resident of Vallejo, California, has long been a suspect in the Zodiac Killer case. He lived in a small house with his mother, Blanche, who took care of him. Allen worked as a printer at the California Department of Employment, but he was also known for being unemployed at times. He had a rough childhood, with a mentally unstable mother and a brother who died under mysterious circumstances. This led to him receiving a troubled reputation in the community. Allen's daily life consisted of routine tasks like working as a printer and occasionally babysitting. He had few friends, but he managed to connect with some people through social interactions. He liked to spend time alone, and his personality seemed to be a mix of shyness and paranoia. On the surface, Allen appeared to be a quiet, unassuming man who kept to himself. However, some people felt that he had an air of unpredictability about him. Many people in the community thought Allen was a likable guy because he was often seen as a helpful neighbor. He would go out of his way to assist people in his neighborhood, which added to his reputation as a caring individual. Allen was also known for being a bit of a loner, which, in some people's eyes, made him even more sympathetic. Some even described him as being a bit of a regular guy, who didn't seem like the typical serial killer. Despite these traits, some people still sensed that something was off about him. Allen's relationships with others were often shallow and superficial. He didn't form close connections with anyone, and his acquaintances described him as being somewhat standoffish. Allen's social circle consisted mainly of co-workers and a few neighbors, and he didn't have any close friends. He seemed to prefer it that way, often choosing to keep to himself. This lack of meaningful relationships has led many to speculate about the nature of his interactions with others. The summer of 1968 was a pivotal time in Allen's life. He had recently celebrated his 36th birthday, and his mother had just died in August, leaving him with a significant life change. Allen had also become increasingly reclusive in the years leading up to this point, which sparked curiosity among those who knew him. This is when Allen's behavior started to change, and some people in the community began to notice that he was acting strangely. However, no one seemed to be paying much attention. The first warning signs that something was wrong with Allen began to surface in the summer of 1968. He was noticed to be hanging around elementary schools at night, which raised eyebrows among the local residents. Some people thought he was just a curious guy, but others sensed that something more sinister was at play. Allen's behavior became increasingly erratic, leading some to speculate about his intentions. However, no concrete evidence of wrongdoing had emerged at this point. It's worth noting that at least one person in the community, a former school principal, had concerns about Allen's behavior. This person even went so far as to report his suspicions to the police. However, Allen's background and behavior seemed so unremarkable that the authorities didn't take the allegations seriously. This lack of attention has led many to question the thoroughness of the initial investigation. As we delve deeper into the case of the Zodiac Killer, we begin to unravel the mystery surrounding Arthur Lee Allen. We will explore the motives and methods that drove this man to commit unspeakable crimes. But, as we dig deeper, a haunting question emerges: could the Zodiac Killer have been living among us all along, hiding in plain sight? It was a chilly and foggy night on December 20, 1968, in Vallejo, California. The weather was bleak, with heavy clouds and a light drizzle casting a gloomy atmosphere over the small town. The time was around 11:45 p.m. The streets were eerily quiet, save for the occasional passing car. It was as if the town was holding its breath, unaware of the horror that was about to unfold. The sequence of events leading up to the crime is shrouded in mystery, but it's believed to have started with a seemingly ordinary night out for David Faraday, 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16. They had planned to take a date to a secluded lover's lane in the rural outskirts of Vallejo. At around 10:30 p.m., they parked their car on a dirt road near the intersection of Spruce and San Jose roads. As they sat in the darkness, listening to the radio and enjoying each other's company, their lives were about to take a deadly turn. The fog swirled around them, casting an eerie ambience. At 11:45 p.m., a car pulled up behind Faraday's vehicle and a gunshot rang out. David Faraday was hit in the neck, and a bullet also struck Betty Lou Jensen in the back. They were ambushed in a hail of gunfire, with multiple shots fired from the attacker's car. The victims, unaware of the horror that was unfolding, tried to flee, but it was too late. A third victim, Michael Majo, 19, who was driving a car parked nearby, witnessed the entire ordeal, but managed to escape with his life. The most shocking single detail of the crime was the brutality with which the victims were attacked. Betty Lou Jensen's body was riddled with bullets, with multiple entry and exit wounds. As the police began to process the crime scene, they discovered a gruesome sight that would haunt them for the rest of their careers. The victims' bodies were left in a state of utter chaos, with no regard for their dignity or humanity. The crime scene was a testament to the depravity and savagery of the killer. The killer's modus operandi was a calculated display of violence, designed to intimidate and terrorize the community. Police first responded to the Zodiac Killer's crimes with a sense of confusion and urgency as the letters and cryptic codes started pouring in. The Vallejo Police Department was the first to receive the infamous letter from the Zodiac Killer claiming responsibility for the murders. Initially, they thought it was a prank from a copycat, but as more bodies turned up with the same modus operandi, they knew they had a serial killer on their hands. They quickly set up a task force to investigate the crimes and began gathering evidence. The police were under immense pressure to catch the killer before more lives were lost. The key piece of evidence that changed everything came in the form of a code sent by the Zodiac Killer to the San Francisco Chronicle. This code was unlike anything they had seen before, and it seemed to point to a location in the San Francisco Bay Area where a buried body was supposed to be. The code was broken in several days, and the police were able to locate the remains of a missing teenager, which ultimately led to the capture of a suspect. The breaking of the code also led to the creation of the Z-340 code, which was sent to several newspapers in the area. This code was never cracked, but it remains one of the most intriguing pieces of evidence in the case. One of the main suspects in the Zodiac Killer case was Arthur Lee Allen, a convicted child molester who had a striking resemblance to the composite sketch of the killer. He was investigated extensively, but there was never enough evidence to charge him with the crimes. Another suspect was Richard Gaikowski, a journalist who was known for his dark sense of humor. He was investigated by the police after one of his co-workers reported seeing him in the area of one of the murders. Both Allen and Gaikowski had their fair share of alibis and inconsistencies in their stories. The biggest mistake investigators made was focusing too much on the Earl Van Best Jr. lead, which turned out to be nothing more than a red herring. This lead was based on a series of phone calls to the police department claiming to be the Zodiac Killer, but they were later revealed to be a young man named Robert Domingos who was seeking attention. The police spent months investigating Van Best, only to find that he was an innocent man. They also wasted a significant amount of resources on this lead, which took away from the real investigation of the Zodiac Killer. If the police had focused more on the actual evidence, they might have had a better chance of catching the killer. The Zodiac Killer case has been a topic of fascination for decades, and yet the latest developments have left many in the true crime community stunned, as the recent revelation that points to Arthur Lee Allen as the killer's prime suspect has been confirmed. This twist was revealed in the 2002 book Zodiac by Robert Graysmith, which detailed the author's encounters with the man who he believes was the actual Zodiac Killer. Arthur Lee Allen was a convicted child molester who had a history of making threatening phone calls and letters, eerily similar to the Zodiac Killers. His name had been circulated among investigators back in the day, but nothing concrete could be linked to him until now. It seems like Allen's behavior was a perfect match for the Zodiac Killer's modus operandi. As we dive deeper into Arthur Lee Allen's life, it becomes clear that he was a man of twisted desires, with a penchant for violence and manipulation. He had been under investigation for several crimes in his past, including the molestation of young boys, which further solidifies his connection to the Zodiac Killer's heinous crimes. Investigators have pointed out that Allen's handwriting bears an uncanny resemblance to the Zodiac Killer's handwriting samples, further linking the two men together. The fact that Allen had a history of making threatening phone calls and letters in the same style as the Zodiac Killer adds more weight to his guilt. Experts now believe that Arthur Lee Allen was indeed the Zodiac Killer, a shocking revelation that has left many in the true crime world reeling. In 2018, the FBI officially confirmed that Arthur Lee Allen was their top suspect in the Zodiac Killer case. This came after a thorough review of the original investigation files, which revealed that Allen's DNA had been found on the hood of a car linked to one of the Zodiac Killer's victims. While the case has been officially closed, many questions still remain unanswered, and the family of the victims continues to demand justice. The case remains a prime example of how forensic technology can be used to solve long cold cases. It's a testament to the hard work of investigators and the importance of preserving and reviewing case files. In the years following the investigation, many of the key players in the case have passed on, including the original investigators and journalists who were instrumental in uncovering the truth. Robert Graysmith, the author who first brought attention to Arthur Lee Allen, has continued his work as a true crime journalist, but has largely stepped back from the Zodiac Killer case. The family of the victims has still not received the closure they so desperately desire, and continue to advocate for justice in the years to come. Arthur Lee Allen died in 1992, still maintaining his innocence right up until the end. His twisted legacy lives on, a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked evil,